Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. That's a really scary situation our OP was put in. I'm glad someone was able to cut it short. Who knows how it might have ended? But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. I want more food. And give me your shoes, too. Some years ago, I worked at a small church. I was only part-time, and still I was often the only one in the office. We got a lot of calls asking for money or food, and while there were certainly those who tried to game the system, we didn't want that to keep us from giving what we could to those who needed it. We worked with a group of churches to pool money to be able to help with rent and utilities, and a group to pool resources for a staffed food pantry. But we didn't want to turn away those who were hungry with nothing, so we also kept a few bags of emergency food rations on hand, all shelf-stable, and with all needed for a few days of meals: cereal, spaghetti, sauce, canned meat, etc. We had smaller bags for single/couples, larger for families, and even a few that were designed for homeless/transient needs. When you didn't have heat and water to prepare food, keyless open tuna, jerky, things like that, plus some socks and such in a reusable bag. One time I had a couple ask for some food and I gave them the resources for ongoing food needs and said I could get them a bag to tide over. Please hang out here in the office. They followed me instead, and I found myself in a large closet with exit blocked by the couple. Me. Okay, here's the bag. Let's just take it back to the office so I can log it. No lie, I was also quite nervous, not because they seemed menacing, but there was no egress. I was blocked in. Still, this wasn't my first rodeo, and I know how to keep a very upbeat, positive tone. Couple. That's not enough for very long. You'd better give us another. Me. I'm sorry, I need to keep other bags on hand for other folks coming in. I'm just authorized to give out the one bag. But I can get you connected with the food pantry to pick up later this week. Again, not my first rodeo. Keep it positive but firm. Couple. Just some of that jerky. Me. No, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Couple. I don't even care about the jerky, but I'm gonna need you to give me some of those shoes, the man said, leaning in as he gestured at these shelves covered in Adidas and Nike boxes. I mentioned it was a small church, right? Not a lot of money. Those boxes were incredibly well organized by our treasurer, but they were simply our cost-cutting filing system for old checks and receipts. Summoning a confidence that bellied my actual fear at this point, I drew up to my full height, planted my feet while clutching the food bag and said, "Sir, I have the authority to give you this bag of food. I have no shoes to give you. Those are boxes of financial records. Let's go back to the office and register this." Man, not convinced. Show me. I don't believe you. I want the shoes. Me. I'm not going into the treasurer's boxes. You may have this bag of food, but you need to step back now and we need to go back to the office. If you would not like the bag of food, we can leave without any of it. Woman, we'll take the food, thank you. Pulls husband back. We go back to the office. I quickly log the food, really just getting their name and signature that they picked it up with information on the food pantry program and that this wasn't an ongoing pickup situation, and they left. I double-check the lock on the door, turn off the phone, and decompress. I wish I could say this was the first or last time I got into a less than desirable safety situation alone at the church, but that's not so. All that said, I'm not sorry we gave out food. People needing help were sometimes big jerks, because people are sometimes jerks, especially when stressed, and people who need help are just people. And when you're in that situation, I understand why you're stressed. It's not cool, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't still help you. But I'll be incredibly pissed off if you push it to the point I have to be mean. And our second story. An angry customer makes a fool of herself. This happened about 20 years ago. It was a few days after Christmas, and I'd been sent out to repair some equipment at a Kmart store. The job went well, and I'd already loaded my truck and cleaned up. All I had left to do was get a manager's signature on my paperwork. I stopped at the customer service desk and asked for him to be paged, then waited for him to show up. I was still standing there with my clipboard, not really paying attention to much of anything, when this little old lady walks in the door, noticed my uniform, and started heading my way. I should backtrack here and mention a couple of things. The first being my employer had changed our uniforms about 6 months earlier to a design that made me look like an assistant manager at every single store I set foot in. People were always stopping me, asking where things were or something similar. I even had people stop me at a fast food chain on my lunch break to complain about something or other. I wasn't really annoyed by it. Most of the time I thought it was funny. The second thing I need to mention is, while you can't judge a book by its cover, you can sometimes tell a lot about a person by their face. The little old lady in this story was no exception. Her face looked like the last smile that had graced it had been sometime during the Eisenhower administration. I started to tell her that I didn't work there. I got as far as, "I'm sorry, ma'am," before she barked at me to "Shut up, Sonny, and listen to me for a minute." That's a direct quote. To this day, I'm not sure if I shut up because I was shocked at her rudeness or just because my brain was trying to work out whether or not I'd actually heard someone use the term "Sonny" in actual conversation. She took advantage of my stunned silence to launch into a diatribe about her experience the last time she shopped there. Something about coupons and how her stuff was bagged, etc., etc., etc. When she paused for a moment to take a breath, I tried to tell her again that I didn't work there. "Ma'am, I can't," she interrupted me by screaming, "I said shut up!" Then launches into her diatribe again. Now, I tend to avoid confrontations, but I can usually hold my own. This old bat had just dragged me into uncharted territory, though. Nothing in my life up to that point has prepared me to deal with a screaming elderly woman half my size. I was more than afraid she was going to have a stroke right there on the spot. I let her run down a bit and tried again, a bit louder. "Ma'am, I don't work." She then tries to clamp her bony hand over my mouth. I had to fend her off by holding my clipboard in front of my face. At that moment, some of my grandpa's wisdom came to the rescue. I remember him telling me once that when someone is that angry, anything you say will only make them worse. If you can just calmly stand there and let them rant until they wind down, then you can deal with them. The best part is they don't get much satisfaction out of it, and they end up looking like an even bigger jerk than they would if you had yelled back. So I made up my mind just to stand there, nodding and listening until she stopped again. I kept my mouth shut. She stared at me for a long moment and then says pointedly, "Well?" I responded with a mild, "Well, what?" "Old lady, aren't you going to help me?" I keep my voice calm, but speak louder than absolutely necessary. "No, but if you want my opinion, I'd go talk to someone who works here." Finally, her eyes darted to the logo on my uniform chest and widened a bit when she realizes that it did not say Kmart. I suddenly realized how quiet it's gotten. A quick glance over my shoulder revealed everyone within earshot had stopped to watch the show. With all the screaming on her part, that included pretty much everyone in the front half of the store that was already busy with people making returns and people buying whole cartloads of Christmas clearance items. Someone snorted, another made a choking noise, and then the laughter started. It hadn't struck me as funny up to that point, but when it did, it was all I could do to control myself. She glanced around, opened her mouth, and closed it as if she started to say something, then thought better of it. After a few seconds, she turned around and marched herself right back out the wrong way through the entrance door without so much as a muttered apology. "Thanks for the advice, Grandpa. You were a far wiser man than I ever realized." You made some stressed out employees' day a lot better. Being around Christmas, I'm sure they'd had long hours and been dealing with this crap already. And our last story. Don't mess with your authority boss. Years ago, I worked in an office that regularly fulfilled federal and state Freedom of Information (FIOA) requests. This was a government, city, county, state job. We had a good reputation of fulfilling public, business, and other government requests quickly, and had good knowledge of all the nuances of the historical importance. Our packets had all the known ownership, buildings, and their use, along with water and mineral rights, power, water, telecommunication lines, historical property maps and deeds, historical tax statements, and all that stuff. We got an awful boss. This boss that didn't want these requests filled without his approval and demanded all requests to go through him first. The man was a horrible micromanager, and if you didn't coddle his delicate moods, he'd become extremely verbally aggressive. He'd get in your face, yelling, and throw stuff, sometimes in your direction. If you happened to be female, he was a complete butt-grabbing sleaze. The one time he did this to me, when he ran out of words to yell and things to throw, I smiled, which upset him more, and told him, "I've heard worse from people who are supposed to be mean more to me. Bring it." Maybe not my best response. Bad Boss also during this time demanded we use his personal email and sent said emails from a personal email. In other words, do not use government-issued emails. His demands for all this pissed me off. So after a cocktail or 3, I came up with a beautifully evil, devious plan. I was tired of waiting on the slow investigation of reported complaints. I contacted all of my friends, regular packet requesters who owned, were looking to own, and whose extended families owned property, residential, business, agricultural, whatever. Help them fill out the request to ensure they were in compliance and will be emailed to Boss's work email, the email he didn't use. All emails came from the compliance office or public relations, not my office. Over 100 requests were sent to him that were never responded to within the FOIA time regulations. This put the state and federal AG office's eye on him and his actions. As soon as their investigation started, he was relieved of all responsibilities, put on leave, and all office activities scrutinized by the AG office, who placed a team to manage us all. This was a little unplanned snafu I happily endured. All because everything he did was thoroughly investigated. He was fired for trying to 1. Have agency-owned assets devalued so he could buy. 2. Sell devalued assets at a trumped-up price. 3. He was purchasing items with office funds that were for his personal use. Since then, his intimidation/harassment charges have gone to court. I don't know what happened. And yes, I fulfilled all the FOIA requests. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.